Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Hogsty. It is the day before 4th of July, so if you're listening to this while shooting off fireworks and drinking beer, you're doing your job as an American right now. So congratulations. It is me, your host, Alex, from my northern middle of the nowhere woods office, up in upstate New York. We have Steve in Houston, we have Dave in Philly, and we have a guest of sorts. Our old buddy Jamual Forrest is back on the show just for one episode. Just wanted to stop in and say hi and stuff. Jamal, welcome back.
Yes, sir. Mall in Maryland, since we doing locations here. You know, it's crazy, Alex, 'cause I was like, I didn't realize, it didn't dawn on me that you weren't in your normal background until you just said where you were.
Oh, sure.
I was like, you're okay, so you're not even in DC right now. You are in upstate New York.
Alex is in the fancy vacation home.
Yeah,
Right.
man, like a log cabin it looked like.
It is a log cabin, technically. It
Okay.
is. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit nicer because it's got, a loft, so it's not all one floor, but it's a small log cabin.
It's how the other half lives. Other
Yes.
are stuck in our crappy homes.
So yeah,
Well,
man, you're doing pretty good, Alex.
I spent all day with a chainsaw chopping down a tree that had fallen on the roof of my grandmother's cottage. So, that's how the other half lives, Steve. We still have to use chainsaws and do manly things.
It's more fun to have the image than the narrative of what I was trying to present. Don't put reality into it.
I almost wasn't able to make the show because my Wi-Fi, all my internet gear stopped working when I got up here, and so I had spent like 2 days getting replacement network gear in here. So that was fun.
That would have been bad because we have a guest, and we've had Skype problems recently. It would have been not good.
No, it would have been very bad.
And it would have been our IT guy was the one with the network issues. Imagine that.
It's always the IT guy that messes it up.
Well, sorry, fellas, can't help y'all tonight. I got problems myself.
Nope. Stuck in the woods, no internet. That would have been the text.
And we would have got the text 3 days later.
Probably, yeah.
Well, I would have driven into town where I have cell reception and sent that text.
Oh man. I appreciate your dedication.
Yeah. Well, that's what's like when you're like in nowhere. Like,
I was counting the other day. I counted up how many of these we've done, and it's if you subtract, we've done 184. I think it's just business shows.
Yeah.
And it counts up to for me it was about 800. So we've done something like 620 of these.
Yeah, that's about right.
2015.
Yeah, because we had the doubles during the season for a long time that added it up. But since we're on 10 years and we've done 52 weeks a year, that's a minimum of 520.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a lot of shows.
So podcast veterans is what everybody in here is, man.
Yeah.
Dave, how does it feel to be a vet?
I'm a vet, but I still keep pulling the show back every week.
That's how I feel a lot of times too. But if you get comfortable, then you're no longer having fun. That's also part of it.
It's true.
So everyone's doing good here. It's been a quiet season. Oh, I should say, Jamal has multiple things he's still doing. Obviously, everyone who listens knows he's not on the show anymore. But he's been focusing on his other stuff: Tap Dive, Hogs Haven.
Say
so
it right, man. At least get the name of the show right. Trap or Dive. Jesus.
I wrote. What did I say? Tap. Sorry.
You said
Trap.
Dive.
Yeah, just forgot.
I did spend all day at a bar too.
I wasn't sure we were talking like UFC or a podcast or something here,
Well, Trap or Dive also sounds kind of like UFC-ish. You could probably use that.
It could also be like a hunting show, I think.
Yeah.
True.
A fishing show, maybe.
Yep.
Maybe. Depends on how you put your spin on it. It's all about perspective, fellas.
And Hogs Haven, who we did not rip off their name for our podcast. I'm just
no.
No, we did not. The name, if I recall, is Kelly Worrell, I think, came up with Hogstye. Did he not? That's the credit.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely is the one who came up with it. Because we were looking for something that didn't just say Redskins at the
I
time.
think we have it on. I think we have it on audio, as a matter of fact. 'Cause
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
he just blurted it out. He went, "How about the hog style?" I think we have that on audio.
It was in one of those 2 4-hour shows we did to start.
Yeah, it's not our proudest moment.
4 hours. I remember y'all was telling me about that when I first got on. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't think
Well,
nothing of it at the time, but now like the longer you get in the podcast, and you're like, yo, I don't even know what you can talk about for 4 hours.
No.
We took breaks and still kept recording. We should have
Well,
just.
that was also a getting to know people thing.
Yeah.
It was, that kind of deal. All right, so there's not a lot to talk about with the team, but there are some interesting things that have happened this
Way
week.
to rope people in, Alex. There's plenty. We've got lots of exciting stuff to talk about today.
Sure.
Man, I
sure. We
can't
have
wait.
lots of exciting. There was some news that Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota got together in was it Oregon? Yeah, it's Oregon, right? That they did that.
Oregon, yeah.
Yeah, they with a bunch of the receivers, running backs, and tight ends to just kind of do a workout this week. That was organized by Mariota, which I think is a good thing. You got this veteran quarterback who's obviously the number 2, but he's kind of showing Daniels this is the stuff you got to do. It's a very easy thing to organize that, but rookies might not plan to do that right away.
Well, let's start with, we've all talked on this show about our opinions on Jaden Daniels. I wrote a column about it. I did his film.
Sure.
Jamal, we haven't heard your opinion. What is your kind of 10,000-foot view of Jaden Daniels?
Oh, Jaden is my guy. I think July 3rd. I think on July 3rd, 2024, it's interesting because a lot of people, and I guess it's the natural case when it comes to fans, but I think a lot of people who were against the Jaden Daniels idea before he was actually selected, I'm sure about 60% of them changed their tune at this point because they've just become ingratiated. I hope I said that word right with Jaden, and I think that's kind of one of the natural points of fandom. But I think me pre-draft up until the point where he was selected, I thought that he was honestly neck and neck with Caleb Williams going into the draft. I thought that there was initially a drastic difference or a gap between Jaden and Drake. I ultimately watched Drake a little bit more, thought it was a little bit closer, but I still thought that Jaden was better. I just think that Jaden is a smart quarterback in terms of like his processing, what he does before the snap, what he does after the snap, how he can lead a receiver with his arm as quickly as possible, like in the middle of a play, like understanding where leverage is, understanding how to beat defenders with his arm. I think that's something that you really don't see that often. I think the way that he can use his head to manipulate safeties, like so many different things that I can really like go down the lane with Jaden. That's not even talking about his legs. And I think all of those things that he can do with his arm, that he can do with his above the neck, I think all of that stuff is impressive to me. And I think it was undervalued by a lot of people who were so keen on what Drake can do with his arm. Because I think a lot of people love Jaden I thought a lot of people believed Jaden was more of a person who was being loved for his legs, but I think it was actually the opposite for me. Like what he did above his legs was all the more important, and I think it was being overlooked. So I'm glad that Washington selected him. That was my 1B guy. And honestly, like I said, I think Caleb and Jaden were kind of neck and neck. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm all in on Jaden. Like it's easy for me to root for him. It's easy for me to be a fan with Washington, especially with this pick.
Yeah, I had Jamal. I had Jaden well above Drake May. I in my rankings and all the film, I thought Jaden had a much better head and eye for the game than did Drake. I thought Drake may process the field slowly. A lot of times he was streaky, so I definitely think they made the right choice. I do think, as to the story at hand, though, I do think that certainly it's not like unusual that one of the quarterbacks would get the receivers together in the offseason, but it's glad to see they did it. Mariota is probably the right guy to do it with being the veteran and everything. So certainly can't. I don't know how much it's going to help, but it certainly can't hurt.
Well, I know when it came to Jaden Daniels, it was a JT O'Sullivan breakdown that I watched. He was on I forget the name of the show with the two guys. I forget the name of that pod show. It's up in New York, I think it is. But when he broke down his film, and one thing he pointed out that impressed me the most, that really sold me, was his actual mechanics. His mechanics is not just sound and consistent. When he took out a play against Florida, I believe it was, but he rolled out to the right. When he had I believe it was Malik Neighbors. No, I'm sorry, with Brian Thomas going down the sideline. He saw him breaking open, and instead of just chucking the ball downfield, you saw him get his body into position, the proper, back in the proper mechanics to make that throw down the sideline almost perfectly. And that's something you see time and time again, no matter if he's on the run, in the pocket, he's consistently, his feet are always right. His throwing motion is compact, and it's just everything about Jayden Daniels. Really, after that breakdown, that actually put me where I was always kind of Jayden Daniels slightly above Caleb Williams, which I knew Steve didn't agree with me when I said that, but I still hold that opinion that I think he was the best quarterback in this draft in my mind.
You could be wrong. It's fine. You're entitled to be wrong.
That's all right. But next year, when I'm proven right, we'll take care of it then. But
what are we going to take care of? There's nothing to take care of.
I think he's challenging you to some kind of duel. I'm not really sure what's going on here.
Come up with swords, and I'll do a duel.
Well, I have swords. Do you need swords?
No, I'll concede right there. I'm done. I'm over.
Oh man.
But as far as them getting together out there, and I'm not surprised that it was Mariota, because the one thing that Jayden Daniels has been holding to form is he wants to earn his leadership role. He wants to earn his place in this team. He's a very, very humble, smart dude. And he's done everything right. He's done everything the way that you would want to see a rookie come in onto this team and do. So he's allowing Mariota to kind of have that veteran leadership role, even though Mariota knows this future is for him, and he's been kind of just doing what he had to do to take all the steps, all the necessary preparation to get forward, to move forward with this team. So,
well, I think Mariota is also going to be a very interesting person to mentor him. Just looking at it long term, or not long term, but for the season at least. You're talking about two guys who are both Heisman winners. In fact, one of the things they did in Oregon was Daniels went with Mariota to visit the campus, and he saw the Heisman Trophy and how they have it displayed there for Mariota. And so they both have that in common. They're both high first round picks. They're both kind of being stereotyped a bit as this more athletic QB. Let's be honest. That's part of it with both them too.
It's not a stereotype. They are more athletic, both of them.
Fair enough. But I think you can also ask Mariota if you're Jayden Daniels, what did you do wrong? Like, what made it go sideways for your career? Because obviously he's got talent. Mariota has a lot of the tools you need. He was a starter in Tennessee for 4 seasons? Like, he has that, but ultimately it came up short. So what did he learn from it? That's something hopefully Jayden Daniels can learn from himself.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting, like the quarterback. So to Steve's point, I don't know how much better it'll make these guys. I also think that the one of the things that these workout groups can do, it does help you get on the same page, because all you're essentially going to go over your playbook, in a sense, in terms of your routes, like your timing, the depth of the route, like what they want to see against a certain coverage. Like, you're going to at some point talk about that. And I think that's going to be important for everybody that's there, backup quarterback, starter, whatever. I mean, you've seen Jahan Dotson there. That's one person that for sure is going to need some type of work with Jayden. So I think all of that is important. But I also think that when we look at it from a fan base, a workout is just a workout. That's all you're doing. I mean, it's chemistry and it's bonding as well, because they went to Oregon to do it. So you're going out there, and Mariota is showing you the way, or showing you like what Oregon is, and if you're staying out there for an extended period, whether that's like a couple of days or a week or something, that's important too, because you're building some chemistry as well off the field, which is really important. But yeah, a workout is just a workout.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest it's going to hurt anything. I mean, it's
Right.
a workout. It's not a panacea here. I will say one thing that's funny about this photo that I guess the Finley sent out. I mean, Austin Ekeler looks like a middle schooler went to work with his dad. You know, I mean,
No, he's not a big guy.
no,
that
he's
is for
not,
sure.
and he's surrounded by a bunch of dudes who are like 6'3", and looks drastically out of place.
Well, that, I mean, the one spot where short guys like maybe Dave or you, Steve, you're 5'8" ish, 5'9".
Well, Dave is 4'10", so
Right,
he's
right,
still
right.
that.
And a
But
half.
that's the role, man. You become the pass catching running back like Austin Eckler, like Darren Sproles back in the day, because he was he was very tiny, Sproles.
It's just
that's
funny. It just the
Yeah.
picture. It just looks funny.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you're rebuilding a team too, you sometimes have to take the misfit toys philosophy.
I think Washington has spent the better part of 30 years making the island of misfit toys.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. But I think Austin Eckler, his role here is going to fit well to what he wants to do. There's been that controversy this week as well, where Eckler said something I believe on Rich Eisen about kind of why he left the Chargers in LA, and it was taken by Tiki Barber apparently this week as like, well, then you're not really a star running back if you don't want to carry the ball 300 times. Or no, that's not how not every guy is going to be the same running back. And I find it funny that Tiki Barber of all people is the one going after Eckler. If you saw that clip.
I did not.
I didn't.
Well,
this is gonna be fun. Tell me.
Okay, so Tiki Barber, Eckler obviously said the reason he's not in LA is because they want to run the ball 300 times with one dude, and that's not Eckler's game. That Harbaugh just doesn't fit. Tiki Barber was saying, well, if you're the star running back, you don't want to ever come off the field. You should be able to run it 300 times a game. You should, be able to also pass catch and do everything. Like that's what star running backs do, and that's why you should be getting paid good money. But let's be honest, that's not Eckler's game. Tiki Barber, in the early part of his career, that wasn't his game either. For a lot of his career, frankly, he was not a featured back. He was Thunder and Lightning with Ron Dane and Tiki Barber, or with Brandon Jacobs there. Remember? He was always splitting carries with a guy who was the power back. So I find it very funny that he's, sitting there claiming that Eckler is somehow less of a running back for this. When Barber had a lot of flaws in his game early on, got knocked out of the NFL for his fumbling problems.
Look, who cares? Does it matter?
Yeah.
Who cares? I really couldn't care less what Tiki Barber thinks. I mean, no, I mean, look, Austin Eckler his performance does not merit him being a 300 carry back per game anyway. Okay.
No.
If you look at what he's done over the past couple of years, especially last year's performance went down. I suspect that the truth of the matter about why he left San Diego is it maybe he wanted to leave, but I don't think San Diego really wanted to keep him either. Okay. I mean, he was averaging less than 4 yards carry last year, and that was drastically less than the highs of his career. So he has something to prove in here. This is kind of a prove it year for him here. He's got to show that he can get it back, and a lot of running backs do not get it back.
Well, I mean, I think he's still been very productive as that pass catching role. I agree with you. He's not going to be the ideal runner, but I wouldn't worry about that part too much, honestly, looking at how he plays. I think he's, he has a good niche here as that third down pass catching back. So,
I think it's interesting because I think the way that Eckler was honest in his response, you're talking about a person who is self-aware in that, you're not interested in toting it 300 times. I mean, now granted, that was an exaggeration, but his main point was the lead back is going to get a ton of carries in a run-heavy offense.
mm-hmm.
But I understand where he's coming from. If he's like that wear and tear on him is not going to do well for him. But he also is very aware of how good he is. He can run the ball. He can run outside of tackles, in between the tackles. He can catch the football. I think he's very aware of what his skill set is, but he also knows that if I want to be as effective as I can in my role, I need to find an offense that's suitable for me. And I think that's part of the reason why he decided to come to Washington. I also think it's interesting. In a side note, I don't know if you all seen the New York Giants Hard Knocks offseason episode that came out Wednesday, yesterday.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
I mean,
They had Ekeler as a target. Now I don't know what their plans were for Ekeler, but he was one of the 5 or 6 guys that they were interested in, talking to or bringing on to New York. But if they were going to bring him on, I don't know what their plans were. Clearly, he signed to Washington, but if they were going to get him on in replacement of Saquon, were they going to get another running back as well? Because ultimately, I think the way that they were going to do things probably just never meshed well, especially when you have a Brian Robinson on your team in Washington. You have Chris Rodriguez, who is another guy who can really tote the rock in terms of in between the tackle. He's a power back. He's going to lighten the load for Austin Ekeler. So for the way that Tiki Barber said what he said, first off, it's 2024. You get some running backs who has a lot of carries up in the 200s. Like Derrick Henry is one guy for sure who's getting like 250 plus a season, 275 plus a season. But at the end of the day, like that 3-man rotation at running back is more common than you think now. And I know Tiki knows that. So I don't know why he felt the need to say star running backs is going to get a lot of carries or however he phrased it. Because at the end of the day, like Ekeler clearly is a talented back. But what was your I wonder, matter of fact, he's a Giants guy. So I wonder if he knew that they were going after Ekeler and he turned them down or something like that.
Oh, you think he might have got a little spurning thing going on?
Just thinking of things. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it's a bit Oliver Stone-ish, but maybe.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's no running back last year had 300 carries.
I actually think Chris Rodriguez is the best pure running back on the roster, on Washington's roster.
You've been saying that for a long time. You think you're a big fan.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, you're right, Jamal, because I just double checked. No one's got 300 carries last year. Derrick Henry was the closest with 280. You don't even have 32 guys who've gotten over 200 carries last season. It's only 23. So it's just the way the league is now. No one's a high volume guy quite like they used to be back in the 80s or, even the 90s.
Well, the 2000s when he was in there. How much was Tiki? Matter of fact, let me look. How much was Tiki getting? This season. Yeah,
because Tiki Barber was kind of making himself up to be like he was this big featured back.
He had 300. Oh, Lord Jesus. Yeah, he had 300 attempts. 1, 2, 3. He had 300 attempts 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, that's
a lot of carries.
A lot. But, he also fumbled all the time.
I don't really care. Tiki Barber can say whatever he wants. So what?
No, the one point that he went to was that he mentioned Christian McCaffrey. His part where he made some sense too, because Ekeler is making these comments. He's been trying to get his money over the last couple of years and everything. But the only problem is that you can't talk yourself into a class of Christian McCaffrey when you only had just barely 2 years of over just 200 carries that year, which is 2021 and 2022, where Christian McCaffrey did it 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 times. And last year was his second most in carry, 272, where in 2019 he had 287 carries. That goes on top of all the targets and receptions that he has. Christian McCaffrey is kind of in a class of himself, and like what Tiki Barber said, and he's right. You have Christian McCaffrey who makes $19 million, and then you have everybody else.
Okay,
You
so
know, so
Austin Ekeler is on a 2-year contract, but
Right.
however, his cap hit this year is 3.2 million. It goes up to more than 5 million next year. That's a lot for a guy who isn't the starter, if he's not. So I think this year, in spite of the 2-year contract, this year for Austin Ekeler is a prove it year. And if he proves himself and he's highly effective, whether it's a purely running or a combination of running and receiving or whatever, he will stay. But he's going to have to earn it because I think this organization, the management now, does not seem to be one that wastes cap space. And I think they'll go. And his dead cap next year is only 1.5 million. He could represent a savings of 3.6 million next year. So I think he's got a lot to prove this year.
I mean, I think he does, but I also look at, even though he had a down year last year, he still produced about 900 yards combined, rushing and receiving. Like, that's good production from
Not $5 million worth of production.
Maybe not, but it's closer to that than it is, anyone else we have on the roster.
Yeah.
Like that. That to me is a very good number 2 split back kind of production. So I don't know. It depends on how much you value that from a running back, I guess.
well, see, the one thing
I
you
would
have to
more
be
worry about just his age, because he's going to hit that magic 30 number with a
Well,
running
see,
back.
And that was kind of a point I was going to mention, because the one thing when you evaluate Eckler from last year, he did spend quite a bit of that year battling injuries, especially on the early part of the year, I do believe it was. And he did get over 1,000 total yards, but now you have to think, are those injuries just more of a fluke, or is it because he's getting to that part of his career to where now he's going to have to start fighting off more of these injuries every year? And that's what this year is going to prove right there, what Steve's been mentioning too. So last year is kind of like one of them years, like, did he fall off only because of the injuries, but he's okay? Or did he fall off with the injuries because he's at that point where he's about ready to hit that proverbial wall that all running backs hit at that age?
Yeah. Although you can put the caveat, since he's a receiving back, they don't all hit that like the same.
That's
Receiving
true.
backs, tend to,
especially
have
since
less
he has a
tread.
lot less wear and tear on his legs on running the ball itself too. You're right
Yeah.
about that. I
Yeah.
agree.
We'll see what happens with it. I have some hope. I'm a big fan of receiving backs in general. Ever since we got to talk to Chris Thompson back when we were able to get good interviews at training camp in the
And
day.
he was fun to watch too for a bit there.
Yeah.
Real
I'm a
fun to
sucker for
watch.
that kind of guy.
Yeah, I think I did. I say it on the air. I think we will probably be shut out of training camp this year. So
Yeah.
no hope.
Well,
Things ain't been the same since COVID or since post.
Yeah, no, they haven't.
2019.
No.
It's been very weird over there, and well, I mean, you all know I can't.
We got a very short email saying no is what we'll say.
I sent back a detailed response and was promptly ignored.
Yes.
Wait, y'all talking about y'all did one as like this year? Y'all sent y'all
Yeah, will tell you off the air. I don't want to get into it on the air.
Okay, it's cool because like the way they I just checked in with them via email and I'm like all right, well y'all said apply at this date and I'm like, well the date's here and so we can talk.
Yeah, we can talk.
I'm so
there.
confused.
Well, I got normal commoner ticket to go for one day at least.
Yeah. I got
But,
a Sunday.
Yeah.
Whatever that day is.
I'm going. I think the last Sunday. So if you're there and I'm there, we'll meet up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So that's actually good, but also are they sold out? Like, cause there's some of these things that you are shaking your head, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot. Non-visual medium. Yes, they've sold out by and large on most of the days.
You've forgotten that this show is not on camera or something.
I suddenly forgot.
It's frustrating because like the thing they so like they update their website. Some of them say sold out, some of them don't. And then when I go to that little app that they sell the tickets on, It doesn't say, yeah, some of them say sold out, some of them don't. But also, like the ones that aren't sold out, they don't have an option for you to buy a ticket.
Right. It's a mess. I will say, and I'll tell anybody who's in their front office, you really messed up how you did training camp. So whoever you put in charge of that, don't have them there next year.
And I'm not even mad that y'all limited to six. Because from what I understand, teams have started to limit the amount of practices that are open to the public. That doesn't bother me. But like, at least get it right. Like, help us out.
Yeah, yeah. I was more upset about the whole parking situation, but I got a parking pass, so I'm okay.
Is it possible to bore the audience more with this?
Yeah. All right, fine. We can move on. You guys want to talk about London Fletcher getting screwed?
You're the host, man.
All right, I'm the host. Let's talk about London Fletcher. He got screwed out of the Hall of Fame again. He was on the top 25 candidates list for the Hall of Fame, and then they cut it down to 15. I believe that was this week, right? When was that announced?
The finalist was announced recently. Just say it like that.
Yeah. So it was just announced, and he was cut. He did not make the cut. So yet again, London Fletcher, along with many other notable Redskins like Joe Jacoby, not getting in, probably because he was a Redskin. I'm just gonna put it out there.
I mean, I think Dave needs to go first because Dave wrote a whole column about it and got
Dave wrote a
couple
column and got in a
arguments
fight
about it,
online.
so, yeah.
Well, of course, the column decided to come about because I made my normal random comment that Russell Baxter starts in terms of talking about Hall of Fame. I don't want to say anything negative about Russell Baxter, even though he can kind of be a bit.
I'll say it about him. He's the most cantankerous, egotistical,
I was just going to say that
commenter online. Okay, that's
right.
What you don't want to say.
Well, I was going to kind of say that because he used that
just
in my sense.
Let me spit it out. Just let me spit it out.
Yeah, I would have stuttered anyway. It's too long of a word anyway, so that's good. But either way, so I joined a comment thread, and my normal thing is I make the comment when they start talking about guys left out, guys getting in, and all that good stuff. I go in there. Well, London Fletcher, Joe Jacoby were robbed, and this time around when I said that, basically, I go in there. Well, I know there's going to be a certain person that's going to come on you and say I'm wrong, but he's 100% incorrect. So he took that in a very negative light. So we went back and forth.
I've never seen anyone get so riled up by, a stupid tweet.
Right. And so, and the best part was I wasn't playing into his game and getting drawn into trying to answer, well, who are you talking about? I'm just like, well, I'm making a statement of fact is all I'm doing. I don't know what your problem is. Right. So I went ahead and wrote the article about it so I could finally put it into words because I get tired of getting conversations and I having to repeat myself over and over again. So that's where that conversation came in. And when I did it, I had picked his peers of Derek Brooks, Ray Lewis, Zach Thomas, and Brian Urlacher of that time. And all four of them are all into the Hall of Fame. And and of course, when we go in the comments section, just real quick, what's that guy's name on there? You probably know, Steve, top of my head.
Well, the commenter, he's gone by many names.
Right. Yeah. So
the guy that's the dumbest commenter we have in DI. Right. Hello, how are you?
So he took exception to the fact that I used that when I stated in there is the fact that by a statistical standpoint, when you look at the numbers, we look at the overall career. If you break down the first 6 starts of this whole group and their next 6 starts, statistically speaking, London Fletcher has been near the top on every single season and every major statistical category except for one. His subsequent 6 years, his 6 years 7 through 12, he was last in interceptions. Outside of that group, he's been number 2. Number 1 time, number 2 8 times, so forth, whatever. That's all in the article. But my point is you're talking about an undersized, undrafted free agent from a small school that nobody thought was even going to make an NFL roster year 1 to begin with, or probably end up being a practice squad guy. He ends up being a starter year 2. And then he goes on, and in terms of what he did for, I mean, and and not just statistics wise either, just on performance, he has done more than stand tall amongst his peers that whole time. Now he's not of a Ray Lewis style where he takes over a defense. I can see that. I understand that part, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what he's done defensively in his performance, you can't deny that he is. If he's not in that Ray Lewis class, he's on his tail. He's right there. The problem is Ray Lewis played for a dominant defense in the 2000 season, was a leader of that defense, and that defense was dominant for many years. He played for one team, and he was the face of that team. London Fletcher, after the Rams, unfortunately, with the Bills and with the Redskins, unfortunately, he played for bad teams and a horrendous owner. So I think all that kind of plays into all that. So my whole point with this whole article is he is more than deserving of an honor to be in the Hall of Fame. Maybe not a first ballot. I'll concede that. That's fine. But to go this long and not to make a finals list when you have, I mean, especially Zach Thomas. Zach Thomas is very comparable in many aspects to London Fletcher his entire career. And Zach Thomas never even sniffed a Super Bowl, and London Fletcher has a Super Bowl.
I think London is probably a borderline candidate, but what stuck out to me the most is the Zach Thomas comparison. I don't, like Ray Lewis won Super Bowls. He was a loud, boisterous personality.
Right.
So he was very well known. Fletcher wasn't. He played for mostly bad teams, at least in the end of his career in Washington. But
Right.
Zach Thomas is a pretty good comparison. If Zach Thomas made it, I mean, I think there's a pretty good argument for London. That's what stuck out to me the most.
I would argue Brian Urlacher too, frankly. I mean, Brian Urlacher mostly played on terrible teams most of his career. The Bears were nothing. I mean, I know they had one Super Bowl run when he was there,
13-3 season,
yeah. But otherwise, the Chicago teams were mostly dreadful, right? Like there was nothing great about them for a lot of years. And I think when you factor in things like longevity with Fletcher, now I think he should have retired in 2012, not stayed on for 2013, but that's just my opinion. Like he was kind of done in 2013. He couldn't really run anymore. Still wound up with 111 tackles. So, that's what washed up looked like for him.
And it's interesting you say that because that's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons why I broke it down the first 6 starts and the subsequent 6 starts after that, because one of the common themes I hear about is he played so long, so he amassed all these numbers and these tackles and everything. And that's the only reason why he's like that. Well, if you look at just 12 years as a starter amongst his entire peer group, he's been near the top in almost every statistical category that you consider for a linebacker in that entire peer group. So it's so you could take that while he padded his stats because of those few extra years. You could take that out of the conversation, in my opinion.
And you keep saying first 6 starts. What you meant is what the column covers is first 6 seasons as a starter.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, first 6 seasons,
not
and
6 games.
Correct.
Right.
And the subsequent 6 seasons after that. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I think is so Dave brought up a really good point. Like the narrative or theme that people try to cling on to is, he played so many years is why he accumulated so many stats. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a person who has seen success at its highest end in terms of making it to the Super Bowl, right? Sure, you were young. You were young at the time, but at the same time, you were still a person who seen that level of success. But not only did you see that level of success, you succeeded with the St. Louis Rams. You moved on to Buffalo, made a household name in Buffalo. Moved on from Buffalo, made a household name in Washington. You played with 3 different franchises. You were successful at the highest level for all 3 franchises, let alone in Washington, where you came in at 33, signed a 5-year contract, right? And you were a dog. Like, you were fearless. You can cover. You can make plays in the box. You can tackle. You were a hard hitter, and you had hands. Like a middle linebacker that's 5'10", who had receiver hands. And also, not only did you just have receiver hands, you can make people miss after you made the pick. Like you were a playmaker with the ball in your hands too. Like those are things that people just are overlooking when it comes to London because they're finding these excuses to not get him in the Hall of Fame or to allow the reasoning to exist for why he's not in the Hall of Fame. And I think that's some things that people are just overthinking, and also I think was also a byproduct of London's status is the fact that he isn't a Ray Lewis, right? And personally, I'm a Thomas fan. Zach Thomas, that's my guy. So whatever they say, I ain't got no complaints about Zach Thomas. But London Fletcher for sure. In terms of like he's a quiet. I mean, he had energy on the field if you just watched him play on his teams. But in terms from a national perspective, he never really made a case for himself. It wasn't his job to. He just played the football. He just played football. And he played the game that he loved. But at the same time, like when you have a person who's as quiet as London, even though he played as many years as he did, it's hard for a lot of people to garner so much support for you. Like the furthest you could get recognized. Now I'm not saying his campaign is forever over. He may end up getting in the Hall of Fame, but it's hard for people to really rally for you when, especially early on when you're eligible, to really say that this is like he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Like they may take their time with London. Like it may be one of those years where it's like, all right, well,
I think
guys,
you hit on something though, Jamal, which is, and other Washington players have suffered through this. Don't forget who votes. Okay, it's mostly the media. They've increased a couple player slots recently, but it's mostly media. And the louder, more gregarious personalities tend to have a better shot. And this doesn't just football; it goes and bleeds into baseball as well. I mean, look at like Barry Bonds, for example, in baseball. He was very surly, unlikable. And I realized he had the steroid stuff. But point is, like Jacoby, we talked to Jacoby twice on this show for a long time. We've kind of kept up with him a little bit. He is not a guy who's going to promote himself. London Fletcher
Very
is not a guy who's
soft-spoken.
London Fletcher's not a guy to promote. But don't ignore the fact that 2-time second team All Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, led the league in tackles in 2011, Bart Starr Award, which is the character award in 2012. The guy was not just a stat accumulator. He was an outstanding player. He was hurt by the fact that of his personality, probably played for bad teams in Washington, but that does not stop the fact that I think the guy is worthy of Hall of Fame consideration. That's my view.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna have anyone here say he isn't worthy of the Hall of Fame. Like we're all a little biased.
Russell Baxter, maybe, apparently.
Russell Baxter.
I mean, to be fair, Russell Baxter never said he didn't deserve it. And, just to be fair on that.
That was that was my one check-in on Twitter when you sent this to me. And what I noticed out of that is he somehow thinks he owns the comments, his timeline. Well, you don't. I'm sorry, dude. It's there for
in fact, no one from Tampa came on and blasted him for that too as well. It's like that's just ridiculous. But in that thread, there was one comment that did kind of take me back a little bit. It was like someone come on there and said, well, Washington already has plenty of Hall of Fame players on there, so I heard the other players, and they had 32 total, which are ranked third.
They're one of the oldest franchises in the league. I mean,
you're right. And
what's that have to do with any of it?
Nothing.
Well, see, that's true. I get that, but there's a side of me thinking, I can kind of see the point a little bit in terms of you want to make sure you recognize these other franchises, especially when they have deserving greats that play for these franchises. I get that. In that conversation, when you talk that's fine when you have names like Larry Brown, Jerry Smith, and Gary Clark and all of them, and you sit there and you want to keep pushing them off because you have other deserving players and other franchises. Okay, you can have that conversation for too many players on one team being in there. Let's put these guys out to the side. But to me, I don't think that applies for guys like London Fletcher and Joe Jacoby. When it comes to those two guys, they should be merit alone and what they've done for their teams and the impact that they've had. And they check most, if not all, the boxes especially Joe Jacoby. So I don't want to hear that conversation while Washington has too many in there anyway. Their
Yeah.
merits alone supersede that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I to say any one team has too many, that'd be like complaining, well, the Yankees have too many players in the Baseball Hall of Fame, or the Lakers have too. No, if you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, you're in the Hall of Fame. Doesn't matter who you play for,
Right.
unless it's Dallas, and then
Well,
screw
also
them.
again, Washington has been a franchise since 1932.
Right.
Right.
I mean, what are
They're
we
one of
talking
the
about here?
10 oldest or one of the 10 early franchises.
It's a ridiculous argument, dumb argument.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of dumb and ridiculous, why don't we get to the position group breakdown?
Speaking of dumb and why is it dumb and ridiculous?
Because I wrote it this week. That's why it's dumb and ridiculous.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So this week we broke down tight ends on the team. Another one of those positions. I picked the two positions somehow, Steve, that I think had some of the heaviest turnover in the roster.
I gave
with tight
everybody
ends
an
and defensive
opportunity.
ends. I know, it's fine. So I broke
Normally
out
I come to Alex for these things when I need it. Nobody else has picked it. I'll come to Alex and can you do this? But this time it's just on you.
It is on me because I like tight ends in general. A lot of turnover.
We need to save that quote. Alex likes tight ends.
I do. I will admit it. Obviously, Logan Thomas gone. Where did he end up going? Was it the Raiders?
San Francisco.
Yeah.
San Francisco. Okay. Yeah, that's right. He's like going to be their number 3 guy. So we have returning, since he's gone, the 3 guys who are backups: Bates, Turner, and Armani Rogers. All 3 guys are, let's say, high end number 3, maybe a number 2 type at best, in terms of where they might place on a roster. So the team needed to make some serious additions, and it does seem like the tight end room was a pretty big focus for Kingsbury. He brings in Zach Ertz, who he'd worked with in Arizona. Ertz has had a lot of injury issues the last few years. If you look at his numbers, though, things like yards per catch haven't changed. His production per game when he was healthy didn't really change a whole lot. He's just missed a lot of games, and that's what's impacted his stats more than anything. So Ertz comes in, he knows the system, which is useful, and then we're talking about them drafting Ben Sinnott, which I don't know about you guys. The more I watch of him, the more excited I get. I think that this guy could be a feature tight end. I know he's going to kind of play that H-back tight end role they were talking about early on.
Well, that's his game. He's not an inline tight end.
Right. He's not. He's going to line up off the line of scrimmage a little bit more. You're right.
I think in this group, like Zach Ertz is going to be a disappointment. He's 34 years old, injured a lot. I mean, he's a name, okay? So, I mean, he attracts attention because of his name and because of what he's done in the past. But there's a reason he's floating around out there. There's a reason why he's on a 1-year, $3 million deal. I'm not disparaging the guy necessarily, but I don't think he's one of these guys that I think his name and reputation at this point in his career is going to outshine his actual production. And yeah, I agree. Ben Sinnott is the future because all these guys, like they're drafted by the prior regime, Bates, brought in Rogers, Cole Turner. I mean, Armani Rogers, I think, has shown some potential here and there. The rest of them have been just a bunch of guys to me.
Rogers has basically just been hurt nonstop.
Yeah.
He's got freak athleticism, and he shows well in like preseason training camp stuff, and then he gets hurt right away. So we've seen him for 1 game, so we don't really know what he could do. I understand what you're saying about Ertz. I don't think he will be. I think if I were guessing, he'll be the starter week 1, and they're perfectly ready and accepting that he's just going to get hurt in a couple weeks, and then Sinnott can slide in. Like you're going to use him for what he can do, and hopefully he provides some veteran leadership in the locker room and can teach these guys, here's what Cliff Kingsbury wants. But then when he's hurt, and you just move on. And you make that move when it happens. That's my guess. It might be a little cynical.
I'm not too sure about this whole thing. Or where y'all heads are with Zach specifically. Um, I don't think that. So Zach is obviously athletically lost a step. I mean, given his age and the amount of time that he's put into the NFL already. But I think his biggest strength has always been like he's a route runner. Like he knows how to run routes. You don't lose that. Like that's something you understand from if you had it when you came into the league, you got it when you're 45 years old. That again, it just matters in terms of if you athletically lost a step. But Zach is still in good shape. He's still a person who's clearly able to run in the NFL. Just last year, or excuse me, 2 years ago, because I didn't watch him last year. I watched him heading into 2023. He was still a solid. He was a solid player then in terms of receiving threat in the red zone. Third downs, he can kill you. He's a matchup problem because linebackers still can't check him. So I think we're undervaluing him, and I think we're doing that because of his age. Obviously at this point he has an injury history, but I think because he's older as well, I don't think we expect him to do too much. I don't expect him to do too much as well. I'm answering that question, but I also think that not expecting him to do too much doesn't mean what he does is not going to be super helpful for this team. And I think that's kind of my difference with Zach. Ben Sinnott is another guy. I'm like, I I got to see it. Um, I was kind of iffy on the pick. I was kind of iffy on picking him right there in the second round. And I don't know just exactly what he'll bring in terms of like a receiving threat. I think that he can move very fine in terms of like his position versatility. He can line up in the backfield. He can line up in line. He can split out wide. But I don't think he's good out wide. I think he's okay in line. But I think he's most effective in the backfield. So like those are your options in my opinion. Kind of see where that goes. Somebody mentioned Armani Rogers. Oh man, yeah. All right. Somebody mentioned Armani Rogers. He's coming off an injury. I think it's an Achilles injury. I loved Armani Rogers as a rookie, and his going into his second year. But now, like, I have to wait and see with him too because of that injury, that season-ending injury that he suffered last season, which is unfortunate because I really thought that as a former quarterback, you can really see that transformation growing, and now he's taking some moments to where he has to focus on a rehab versus actually getting better. So I'll pause there so we can look at some other. We got some more tight ends to talk about, but those are my top three. Like
I hear you about Zach Ertz, I guess, but I can't get over the fact that he's 34 and he hasn't played a full season, even close to a full season in 4 years. I can't get past that.
Yeah,
he's
been injured quite a lot.
And I agree with Ben Sinnott. I think he was overdrafted where they drafted him round 2. I think that was probably the commonly held view. I think it matters a lot how they use the guy, and he is going to be kind of the do everything sort of guy, out of the backfield. I don't think he's an inline tight end. I don't know if he's going to split wide. So I mean, he's not the traditional tight end that you would see in kind of a more traditional offense. No. So that's still probably Ertz, maybe Bates. And we haven't mentioned like the unfortunately named Colson Yankoff, which is a really weird name. But yeah,
I mean, it's a fantastic name. So I can. Do you want? I did a little bit of a deep dive into Colson Yankoff.
Please go ahead.
The fun thing about Colson Yankoff is he has never played tight end. In fact, in college, he played quarterback, running back, and receiver, never tight end. He started out as he was actually a highly recruited quarterback, like the top quarterback coming out of Idaho, where he's from, that year. And he just never saw the field. He kept on winding up on teams where he was behind better guys. So then he moved or he changed to UCLA at one point, moved to receiver there, and then running back in his last season. He is not a tight end. That might be his position designation, but he's here to play special teams, if anything. He's not big enough to be a tight end, I don't believe. I think he's like 210 pounds. So
Well, he's
Colson's
listed at
6'5",
230.
right?
No, Colson is 6'3", 233 is
6'3".
how he's listed at. Yeah.
they're listing him up there. He's a skinny guy at 233.
I think I might have got. I don't know where I got that, but that's what I have him on our chart is 6'3", 233.
Which I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying, like, when I looked at video of him playing. By the way, you can't find a lot of it because it's all like his high school ball. But
Well, look, I mean, I mean, if they keep 3 on the roster,
right.
Ertz and Sanat are a guarantee, so there's a lock. And so, I mean, even the 3rd and 4th position, if they keep a 4th, I mean, Yankoff would really have to show a lot to bump one of those guys out. He's destined to be cut or on the practice squad, I think, year 1.
Well, I know to kind of be real quick. Zach Ertz, he knows the offense. He has a comfort level with Kingsbury. I'm not expecting a lot from him, although I think he can still offer something to the offense. And I've spoken many times about Ben Sinnott. I love his ceiling and where he can be. I think he can definitely be a good, productive route runner, and he could do a lot of the routes, in the underneath zone area and stuff like that, and he has a knack of being able to sit down and find the open spots in the zone, which is something he does very, very well, which you want your tight end to do. But the biggest wild card in this whole mix to me is Bates. Bates is probably the best blocking tight end that they have, both run and pass blocking. When it comes to if they run any form of 12 personnel sets or even jumbo package inside the goal line, I think they're going to want to anyway lean on him to be that guy, to be that inline blocker to help move the pocket forward. So, and, for the run, especially in goal line situations. So I think that's what they want from Bates. I think he's capable of that. I don't have a ton of confidence he's going to mature into that because I haven't seen any progression from him to be that guy. I see like little snippets here and there, and I see what he can do at times. But outside of that, he's very inconsistent. But I think ultimately that's what I think they'd like to have is a combo of Bates and Sinnott being their two tight end 1 and 2 going forward, to be honest with you, in my opinion.
I don't know if that's the long-term plan, but I mean, just because Bates is also in his final season on his rookie contract. So if you're just doing that kind of, GM hat stuff, you're probably not going to offer him an extension with what he's shown you so far. He would actually have to impress pretty heavily himself.
Sure.
I would guess that they're going to pick up somebody else, down the road to be that blocking second tight end. If Sanat works out to be the long-term guy.
Right.
But, I mean, we'll see where I don't disagree with your assessment of Bates. I think that is what he is. Although there's a lot of issues with his blocking that I see when I watch him play. I just realize there aren't good blocking tight ends anymore.
Right.
It's like being mad that no one can play fullback anymore at this point. They just don't exist very often. So,
that was the one frustrating part with Bates when he did play. You would see a play or two in a row where he's dominating the guy in front of him and pushing him downfield, and next thing you know, he just disappears. He's being thrown away. He's being tossed away like a rag doll. It's like, who are you? You're not sustaining this block like you were before. Now you're not sustaining the block, and it's just like, come on, man. The inconsistencies is frustrating with him.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you had mentioned you thought one of the wild cards was John in a sense, but I think a wild card would be Cole Turner. I think it's 2 years in a row where first off, I'm a big fan of Cole in terms of like what he can do at the catch point. I don't think he's one of the I don't think he's one of the best separators in tighter coverage. I think that he knows like zone voids and he can get open against zone. That's no problem, but you're not always going to be facing zone. You're not always going to be facing like open field in that aspect. But I also think that from his perspective, from reporters, shout out to reporters, because people like the Hogs Die or Hogs Haven or anybody can't all of a sudden got denied access. We're gonna talk about that after the show. I think that they have said that he's been always a practice guy. Like, he shows up in practice, he stands out in practice. But unfortunately, he doesn't get the snap count reps in games. And then when he does get in games, he doesn't really get the targets a lot. Or the looks. And I think that's frustrating from my perspective, because I believe what he can do at the catch point, and it's important because of his frame. You're talking about a 6'5", 6'6" guy who can really jump out the gym, and he has great arm extension. He has arm length, so like his wingspan is pretty incredible. But the last coaching staff had whatever plans they had for him, but now you're in a new situation and you got to step up. And I think this will probably determine for his career, what's going to be next for him. So I think a wild card is like a person like Cole, who, like, if you really want to show that you're valuable to this team as a tight end, as a mismatch, a big slot guy, or a person who can really make a difference in the red zone, it's your time.
I think Turner probably has more potential than Bates to be a plus level player, and neither one of those guys really got a decent chance under the Rivera era. The problem is, with the new coaching staff here, I don't know what kind of chance they're going to get now either. I don't know how open this coaching staff is to allowing the prior regime folks to really take prominent roles. I don't know. I don't really have a basis for that. It's just a feeling I get. But I do think Cole Turner is more of a receiving threat than is John Bates. I think you want to break it down in real simple terms. Bates is more of a traditional tight end. Cole Turner is more of a threat. I think that's how I would break it down into like really, really simple, basic terms. So I do think they deserve to get a chance. The simple fact is that Ertz and Sonata are going to get most of the time. Period. Dot. The end. Ertz and Sonata are going to get most of the time. I think, in my view. But those two guys deserve a shot for sure. And I do agree that I think I would probably put Turner over Bates in terms of who would present the most danger to an opposing defense.
Yeah. So who are your final three then, Steve? Did you say already?
No. Okay. So yeah. Jamal, if you've forgotten, we always take a stab at the roster, the final cut here. Okay. So obviously the 1 and 2, Ertz and Sanat. I'm gonna say Armani Rogers is number 3.
Okay, bold.
And then I'm gonna say maybe they'll keep 4 and they'll keep Cole Turner 2, and then they'll cut Bates and Yankoff will be on the practice squad.
Now isn't Armani Rogers entering this season injured though? He's not even fully healthy yet, right?
You know what? You're right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So forget that then. So he'll be on PUP then to start the season. And so then that bumps. I still think they'll probably keep 4. So I'll go with Bates getting the last slot over.
With that scenario, I agree with those 4.
Okay, so I will play a different role here. While I do think that there's a 90% chance Zach Ertz makes the roster, I'll just go down the lane of it being the 10% chance that he doesn't. Given that we all have Zach Ertz essentially making it, I'll just say, there are always surprise cut candidates, and some of you all on this panel are convinced that he may not have it, right? So let's just say that he gets cut heading into the season. I think my 3 or 4, because I'm just going to go ahead and outline them. I think it'll be John Bates, obviously Ben, Cole, and I think that's it. I don't think Colson, even though he had a solid spring/summer, I don't think that he shows, because I even know very little about him right now, but I don't think that he shows enough, because like in order to come where you come from in terms of like an undrafted guy, position switch, you got to really stand out in preseason to make that roster. So I'm gonna think that it's these 3, John, Cole, and Ben. I got to see a little bit about Amani only because he's coming off injury. But I think if he shows that he's healthy in training camp, then I think he could be the fourth. But this is in a world where Zach Ertz is cut.
Okay, so I think they only keep 3 just because you think of what Kingsbury does. I think that it's Ertz, Sanat, and I'm going to say that Turner gets it as well. I think that you think of what Cliff Kingsbury likes to do. He's going to want athletic guys more than blockers. So it just makes more sense to have 3 guys who can catch the ball first as his primary focus. So that's my guess. And yeah, I would keep Yankoff on the practice squad, mostly because
You just want the name.
well, one, the name is funny, but given that he does play almost every position on offense, that's the kind of guy you tend to put on a practice squad to just be like, all right, this week you're going to do this week you're going to do that. He can be that guy.
This team has a couple guys with fun names actually this year.
They do.
I like Benning Potato myself. That's the one I like the best.
All right, guys. Well, that should wrap it up for this week. Again, hope you guys enjoy your 4th. And I mean that to not just the audience, but to the 3 of you. Hope no one don't lose any fingers.
I was thinking the same thing. I think that is a mandatory annual statement because of what we've come to learn. So I'm not even mad at you.
Don't pull a JPP. Yes.
Exactly. And Jamal, thanks for joining us again. It's been great that you came home for one
awesome
day at least. So
it's
welcome home,
good.
man. Welcome back anytime.
It's always good catching up with the fellas, man.
Yeah, man. Yep. Good seeing you again, bud. All right, guys. Talk to you all next week.
Later.
Peace.
All right.